Stop me if you've heard this one before. You need to confuse your muscles or shock the body in order to grow. This is an age-old myth about needing to switch up your exercises and do different exercises all of the time in order to stimulate muscle growth. I think this comes from an age-old myth of whenever you do new exercises, you tend to get more sore because it is a novel stimulus that your body and your muscles are not used to. But we know now that muscle damage does not actually lead to growth. When you are sore and damaging the muscle, tearing down the muscle in order to build it back up is not actually the mechanism that builds muscle. The only thing that builds muscle is mechanical tension. And as you'll learn throughout this podcast, when we talk about exercise selection, exercise variation, how many exercises do we need to do? When do we need to switch it up? How often? You will learn that mechanical tension is the only thing that drives muscle growth, and the muscle does not care what exercise or what implement you are using to do that. All it cares about is there tension on this muscle? So that's what we're going to focus on today. How do we choose exercises? Why do we choose certain exercises for certain adaptations? And just dive all the way into exercise selection, building the perfect program for you, and how often you need to switch it up and why. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Lifting Cues podcast, the podcast for lifters. I am your host, Coach Quinn, aka Coach Q. I am an online and in-person fitness coach specializing in training and nutrition plans for building strength and muscle. I've been a lifter for over half of my life, and now into my 30s, am on the journey to becoming a competitive power lifter. And I'm going to take all of my personal experience along with real world experience helping real people get real results to give you the best lifting cues to get you as strong and as jacked as you possibly want. In order to do this, we need a workout program in the gym, and within that workout program, we need to select exercises. This is exercise selection. That is what I'm talking about. The exercises that you choose to do to get your given adaptation, whatever your goal is, whether it's to get strong or build muscle. We're going to focus on both of those because the exercise selection is going to differ a little between those two as far as, what we need to do, how much do we need to do of it, and, are there the volume considerations, the recovery considerations, everything that goes into why we're selecting certain exercises for certain adaptations. So when it comes to what exercises do I need to do? What exercises should I select? There are obviously the two considerations that I mentioned. There is strength and there is muscle building. So we're going to select different exercises based on those different goals. So for strength, the main consideration here is that strength is specific. So whatever movement pattern or whatever lift you want to get stronger in, that exercise is going to need to be in your program. So if you are a power lifter like myself and you want to get stronger at the squat, bench, and deadlift, we better be squat, benching, and deadlifting a significant amount. That is going to be a significant amount of our exercise selection. If you're more of just a general fitness person who wants to get strong, then we can focus on different lifts for just general full body strength. You don't have to do squat, bench, and deadlift specifically. We could find other variations of those exercises that can help you build strength in those movement patterns because you just want to be able to take that strength from outside of the gym or from in the gym to outside of the gym in your daily life and be strong in those functional sort of movement patterns. I'm going to go over what all those movement patterns are. And then when it comes to muscle building, the exercise selection is going to be much less specific. It is just based on movement patterns and how much volume do we need per muscle group to make sure that it grows. So like I said before, muscle doesn't care what the implement is. It just needs to maximize tension. How do we maximize tension? We do that by maximizing the stretch, maximizing our range of motion, and then pushing volume and intensity to make sure we get the most tension on the muscle that we can. So we're going to find exercises that are going to allow us to get full range of motion and then make sure that we can push them intensely and comfortably, safely, I will say, for lack of a better word. I don't love that word because I don't like thinking of exercises as particularly injurious, But when we're pushing things to the highest intensity, the closest proximity to failure, a barbell bench press is probably going to be less safe in that circumstance than a machine chest press, because the bar can actually just fall on our chest if we can't get it up anymore. And if we don't have a spotter or wherever you're working out, we want to make sure that you can do this as safely as possible and be able to recover from it because we're pushing that intensity. So that might make the exercise selection a little bit different. So let's start by just focusing on strength. What exercises specifically do we need to do to make sure that we build strength? Again, this is very specific. So if you want to get better, again, at the squat, bench, deadlift, those are going to be a high priority in our exercise selection. We are probably going to make sure that we prioritize those with a pretty high frequency, and we're probably going to put them at the beginning of our workout. I'm going to put any strength goal exercises at the beginning of the workout because along with it being specific to the movement, we need to learn and get good at that movement pattern to get stronger at it. We also have to lift with maximal loads. You're not going to get as strong as you possibly can lifting with sub-maximal loads. Now, you will gain strength even lifting with sub-maximal loads. You will get stronger as long as you continue to progress in either weight or reps. But if the goal is specifically to get as strong as possible, we're probably going to be lifting above 80% of our 1 rep max in that 1 to 5 rep range. Given amount of volume, we're looking maybe 9 to 15 sets per week per exercise that we want to get stronger at. So we're going to want to make sure those exercises are prioritized at the beginning of the workout so we are as fresh as we can be to be able to lift those maximal loads, making sure that we get the volume in that we need. If we only have so much time in the gym, we need to focus on our most important goal first to make sure that that gets done no matter what. If the accessories get missed that day, at least we got stronger at what we wanted to do. So focusing on that, we'll build out our program with those lifts in mind. Now, again, if you just want to focus on general strength, or I would say even if you are a power lifter just trying to build your strength in general, there are some other considerations that we're looking for. So there are 6 main movement patterns that we're going to focus on. It is a squat pattern, which is knee and hip flexion at the same time. Then there is a hip hinge pattern. You can think of this as your deadlift or RDL, where we are mostly just hinging at the hips. These are going to be the more posterior chain, hamstring, glute dominant exercises. The squat will work the quads and the glutes simultaneously, again, because it is doing both joints are moving at the same time. Then there are the upper body movement patterns. There is vertical pull, which I will refer to as pull. And there is horizontal pull, which I will refer to as rows. And then there is vertical press, which I will call press, think the overhead press. And then there is push, which is horizontal push, think your bench press. So those are the 6 main movement patterns. And if you think about them in terms of what the body is designed to do, what we do in our daily life, those are the main 6 things that we want to be able to do. We could probably throw in a few others like carry. That's something we do functionally on a daily basis. But if you're doing rows and doing deadlifts and things like that, you will get stronger at your carries. So I'm not going to worry about those in this case. So we could probably nitpick some things in there. But if we want to get stronger at those 6 movement patterns, we need to make sure that we are getting that 9 to 15 rep range volume, and we are lifting with close to above sub-maximal loads. So you don't necessarily, if you don't really care necessarily about your 1 rep max on like a barbell row, then we can work in the 5 to 8 rep range, just push very heavy, make sure that we continue to progress, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, a 1 rep max on a barbell row, because no one does that in competition. I don't think anyone's ever asked, hey, what's your max barbell row? But if we can do heavy barbell rows for a set of 5, that is going to help make, our back stronger, our posterior chain stronger, could help your deadlift as well, slightly, at least, working the erectors, holding that weight. So we do want to be able to focus on all of these functional movement patterns as strength athletes and just as general, population people who just want to be very strong. So those are the 6 main lifts that I think we want some variation in some sort of a strength specific, rep range and load. So focusing on those 6. Now, what exercises can you do? Obviously, for the squat, if we are a strength athlete, we have to barbell back squat. So that is going to be the movement pattern there. But if you are just a general fitness and general strength enthusiast, you can pick any squat pattern. This can be a single leg squat pattern if you want to get, really functional, or maybe for some athletes, maybe a split squat or a lunge is much better. If, you have back issues, but you want to get your squat pattern stronger, your legs much stronger, we can do something like a leg press or a hack squat. You can work these in strength, rep ranges, and loads to make sure that you get your legs stronger. Now, that's probably not going to translate to giving you a better squat. It will make your legs stronger, it will help, but again, strength is specific. But when we're just talking about movement pattern strength and how can I be as strong as possible in my daily life, making sure that I can always get up out of a chair, get up and down the stairs, a leg press could be a great way. So just making sure that we have that squat pattern in there. For the hinge pattern, we're going to look at obviously deadlift to start, again, for strength athletes specifically, and just people are going to ask, what's your deadlift? So make sure you get your deadlift up. And that's a great hinge movement because it is a very hip dominant movement. There is a little bit of quad involvement, not so much hamstring. I feel like it is more glutes. The hamstrings don't get super activated on a deadlift, depending on how you deadlift, but it's a great posterior chain exercise, great for longevity. So want to make sure that we have some deadlift variation in there. Now you can do something like an RDL, split leg RDLs, just anything that works that posterior chain, causes you to hinge the hips and bend over. It's going to work that whole posterior chain. Obviously, in daily life, we need to be able to bend down and pick things up for as long as we possibly can. So getting a stronger deadlift will help you be more functional in daily life and improve your longevity, even if you don't care about how much you can deadlift. You should, because it does translate directly to your life and your strength. As far as the upper body movements, I already mentioned the main one that I think for your horizontal row. I think a barbell row is the best display of strength for not only that horizontal pull, being able to pull toward you and use your back, your lats. It's going to work the entire back. I got fireworks for that one if you're watching the video. If you're not on the podcast, you're going to think that's kind of weird. The software that I use, I'm not, super tech savvy sort of person, so I don't really know how to turn off these things, and I like to talk with my hands. I like to move around a lot. So if you're listening, this isn't going to make any sense. Just go ahead and skip. But if you're watching, there's some effects coming up, and I don't really know how to control it, and I'm not really worried about it. I'm thinking about lifting right now. So should you. So that's why you're listening to the Lifting Cues podcast. Anyway. So for our horizontal row, I love the barbell row for this purpose, that it works the entire back by placing yourself in that bent over position. It works the entire posterior chain. You get some good erector work, which will help your deadlifts, help you translate to daily life as well, giving you more core strength out of it. But you can do anything like a seated row. We can even do chest supported rows, a one-arm dumbbell row. I like, getting some single arm work as well. So that's the kind of exercise selection that we're going to be looking for, something that you can push the load pretty heavy and work in that strength rep and load range. So I like barbell rows for the exercise selection there. Then if we're talking about the vertical pull, obviously the pull up or the chin up is going to be, your best one to test your relative strength and build your relative strength. Hopefully working up all the way to, being able to do weighted chin ups. Being able to move your own body weight is probably one of the truest tests of strength. And I think one of the truest tests of health, because as your body composition starts to change the way that you want to, and you get stronger, things like chin-ups and push-ups should get much, much better. They should improve a lot. And I think those are great tests for how your health is improving. Obviously, The pull down really strengthens the lats, but the entire back in general. If we can't do chin-ups, using, the lat pull down machine, I think is probably the best way to go to be able to overload it. You can do all different variations of the pull down machine just so that you are pulling down. And we think about this in daily life, being able to pull ourselves up if, we're hanging from something for whatever reason, or if we fall as we get older and we need to be able to grab something and pull ourselves up. That's where that strength is going to come in handy. So we want to make sure that that movement pattern is strong, and obviously getting your back and lats as strong as possible, only going to protect that posterior chain for as long as possible and make us, as strong as we can possibly be and make us look big in our t-shirt because we can lat spread. Boom. For strength with the horizontal press, obviously the bench press is going to be the big one, especially again, if you're a power lifter, we have to bench press. No ways around it. But if it gives you any trouble or you just want to kind of max out your chest gains and be able to push heavy, the dumbbell press is great. But a chest press, like I said, a push-up, being able to test your push-ups, any of those movements are going to be what we want to focus on. And then for the vertical pressing, being able to keep that overhead mobility and overhead strength. Again, super functional thing to be able to do. We need to be able to put something up high. If you ever want to travel when you're older, you need to be able to get a bag into an overhead bin. That's just an overhead press, and having the overhead mobility and strength to be able to do that, obviously very functional. So even if you don't care about weightlifting, that is a super functional movement as well. So focusing on the strength there, I love the barbell overhead press for this. I might say something controversial here. I think personally, the barbell overhead press is the truest test of upper body strength that there is. I think it is much better than a bench press. I actually wish they tested the overhead press in powerlifting. Well, actually, I don't, because I'm not as good an overhead presser as I am a bencher. I'm not even a very good bencher. So maybe I'm not, but I do really think it is the truest possible test of upper body strength. So besides maybe a chin up, those two, I really think they're much better than just your chest strength. So I really like those two much better because it also takes the mobility to be able to do it. And I think it is so much harder because you're starting from that bottom position. But if you don't want to do the barbell overhead press, if it gives any mobility issues, we need to work on that first. Obviously, dumbbells, machine, whatever it is you want to do, just make sure that we're pressing some stuff overhead. So as you can see, these strength building activities, because we want to lift maximal loads, they lend themselves to more barbell exercises because they are easier to load much heavier. They lend themselves to compound exercises because we can use multiple joints and muscle groups to be able to lift these loads. They have more of a stability aspect when we're using free weights, that the core is much more involved, strengthening that spinal column with all of these type of lifts. So we don't necessarily notice I didn't put abs I didn't put a crunch in the main movement patterns because your core is going to get strengthened just by getting stronger in general. If you've ever done a program of mine or, you've worked with me, we don't work a ton of abs. I will with very, very novice beginners just to teach them what that core engagement feels like and get them to feel what that's supposed to feel like. But once we get past that point, I'm probably not going to do much ab work until we get to an even more advanced level and you really want to build your abs as much as possible. So by doing these compound exercises, we don't need to do ab work as much. The main thing here when we're considering these strength and these big compound movements, lifting with heavy loads above submaximal, is just making sure that we can recover from them. So making sure the frequency and the volume is controlled enough so that we are able to recover. But I would say, honest to God, if you did 3 workouts a week and day 1 was a squat and bench press, day 2 was deadlift and pull down, and day 3 was a barbell row and a overhead press. Actually, I don't love that. Okay, let me go back. Let me circle back. So we're going to do overhead press with chin ups as that push and pull. And then we are going to be able to do your hinge pattern. So we're going to work on the hinge pattern. That is still a pull. So then we will go ahead and push. And then we will do our squat with our barbell rows. So I think that would be, if you just did that and you made sure that you got your volume in, your 6 to 9 to plus sets at, above 80% of your 1RM, pushing that 1 to 5 rep range, I think you would get very strong. And at least in the beginning of your training, you'd probably build a pretty great physique and you would be very functional. You would be extremely strong for the long term if you were able to do that for a long period of time. Now, we may need to switch out the variations to avoid some overuse sort of injuries, but I really think that that could be a complete program. Now, again, maybe we need to get a little bit of extra tricep work, some side delts, just so we look the way that we want to, the way that we actually feel we want to look as strong as we are. Maybe we need to do a little bit more isolation work, hit a little bit of the hamstrings. But other than that, I think you can build a really strong body that is strong for the long term, just using these main 6 movement patterns and training them for strength. I think they should always be a part of your program in some sort of way, and we should always train them in a low-ish rep range. Max out like 6 to 8 to make sure that we're pushing strength and getting stronger in these movement patterns, again, with the full body component, multiple joints, learning how to move, improving range of motion. It will only help you in your muscle building journey as well. If you're able to get stronger and progress here, then we'll be able to take those to more isolation exercises and really be able to push the intensity to build some muscle. So when it comes to exercise selection for muscle building, let's talk about it. I know I said that exercise selection matters much less for muscle growth. So why would I tell you that you need to include these movement patterns in order to get stronger and build muscle? So when it comes to building muscle, again, it is about placing tension on the muscle. How do we do that? Well, obviously, it is through exercise. We stretch and contract the muscle, which produces tension, which in turn signals it to grow. That is the stimulus for growth. So we need to be able to do that. How do we continue to place more tension on a muscle? It is by getting stronger and continuing to progressively overload that exercise. What is the best form of progressive overload? If we don't already know this, go back and listen to the progressive overload podcast. Just saying, guys. But how do we do that? What is the main way? It is adding weight to whatever exercise we are doing. That is the first thing that we can do. We can continue to add weight. Then we can add reps. But if we're not continuing to get stronger, we're not going to be able to continue to place that tension on the muscle. And as you can see from all of these movement patterns, they use muscles to be able to do them. So they are placing tension on the muscle. It's just a matter of how we manipulate them to specifically grow muscle a little bit better. So when we're thinking about, how we build muscle specifically. So because mechanical tension is the driver, we need to make sure that we're getting enough tension. So that is going to increase the volume necessary to be able to grow. The range that we talk about mostly when it comes to muscle growth, the kind of minimum effective range that we're looking for is like 12 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. So I'm going to make sure that we get a minimum of 20 in this kind of, when I'm discussing things, we're talking about getting a minimum of 12 sets per muscle group per week. I'm not going to get all the way up to 20. We can focus on getting there as, you get more advanced. I just want to build you a very specific exercise selection on how do we build specific muscle groups, develop a fully developed and good looking physique that looks as strong as we actually are. So when it comes to that muscle growth, you need to find the specific exercises. This is where exercise selection really matters in the main movement patterns that hit the muscle groups that we want to grow and we're able to get the right amount of volume while pushing the intensity and still be able to recover, because the recovery is where we actually grow that muscle. So that's where the exercise selection is going to differ. So if we think about those 6 main movement patterns, I want to think about, how do I get the maximum amount of stretch out of these exercises? So in your squat pattern, if it really depends on your squat as to what pattern you should pick. If the goal is building up your quads, and you're like me and you're a low bar squatter that sits way back into his squat and it's all ass, I almost never feel my quads on a squat. I do a little bit more now as I've developed my quads a little bit better, but for years, and I'm talking, I started lifting at the age of 13. And I didn't really start focusing on my quads until I was like 29 or 30, when I realized, I was like, oh, these things are pathetic for how long I've been lifting and how strong I actually am. So I had to get them up. But I realized that my squat couldn't do it. My quads were never sore when I squat. Only my glutes were ever sore. So it's like, okay, this is a glute exercise for me. So if I want to hit my quads, I need to find a different squat pattern that is going to build the quads. Then you say to me, well, why don't you just do more leg extensions? So the leg extension specifically really works what's called the rectus femoris a lot better. And it is that big muscle right in the middle of your leg that comes up to your hip, and then it kind of disappears under the other quad muscles. So its job is specifically to do hip flexion. So bringing your knee toward your hip. That's that muscle's job. So it really only works when the hip is flexed. So if we think about what we're doing in a squat pattern, when you're squatting down, you're breaking at the hips, and it's almost a hip extension, but also hip flexion, because we are going down. But this is a passive movement, and the knee is also flexing, but in a passive way. So the rectus femoris is not doing a whole lot in this movement, because we're trying to lower ourselves into this position. It doesn't need to contract. It actually needs to almost relax itself. And then when you come back up, yes, there is knee extension, which the rectus femoris does to some degree, but then we are in hip extension. So we are driving the hips up, which also will kind of release that. Rectus femoris needs to be a passive mover. So it is not growing necessarily as much as the rest of the quad in that squat pattern movement. That's why a leg extension is actually important, because we are able to keep the hips flexed in this position, and then just do knee extension. So the rectus femoris is more activated while helping with knee extension, and it is able to work a little bit harder. So that's where exercise selection does matter. Also, if we want to build up the rest of the quads, we want those quad muscles to be able to use a maximal amount of load. So by doing a squat pattern that hits the quads a little bit more, it will help your entire quads grow. So that's where exercise selection for the quads definitely matters. We want to find a squat pattern that can allow us to overload the quads a little bit more, and probably add a leg extension in to develop the entire quad in a way that is going to help us look and be much stronger. So if you need to find the squat pattern that works best for you in this exercise, that allows you to move the quads through a full range of motion, get a really great stretch. Like I said, for me, as a low bar back squatter, I'm much stronger there. So to hit my quads with a squat, I need to either do some sort of safety bar squat, or elevate my heels so that I can push my knees forward and get more stretch into the quads, and do less hip extension and hip flexion, so that my knees are doing more of the work. That's kind of where I have to go. I have to get manipulative with my lunges and my split squats, elevating my heels, doing lunges on my toes, all this kind of different stuff. So That's where exercise selection becomes very specific to you and very specific to the muscles that you want to grow. If you have access to like a hack squat or a leg press, this can also be a great way to make sure that you hit your quads more with that squat pattern, and then you can add in the leg extensions to hit the quads. All right, so now we got a full quad and squat sidebar there. Coming back to our exercise selection for muscle growth. What was the lesson that we learned from that entire squat sidebar there? It's that we needed to maximize the stretch on the specific muscle group that we were trying to work. So by choosing an exercise that allowed us to stretch our quads more, we're able to maximize that tension. Again, the quad does not care if you're doing a leg press, a barbell back squat, a lunge, a leg extension. It cares a little bit if you're doing a leg extension just because of the way the muscles actually work. But all it cares about is, did you get the maximal amount of tension? Did you get the maximal amount of stress and the maximal amount of activation needed to be able to complete that movement? And were you able to push it with an intensity that actually works for you? Some people will not be able to take the back squat close enough to failure, or maybe you just don't want to, because not only is it super stressful on the quads, the glutes, these are huge muscle groups that take a high recovery cost. It also affects your back, your spine, your central nervous system, your core. It takes a lot to recover from. So if you're going to do barbell back squats to failure, trust me, it's gonna take it out of you. So maybe if your goal is very, very specifically muscle growth, I'm gonna pick exercises that I can recover from a little bit more, something like a hack squat or a leg press that doesn't take as much central nervous system fatigue, doesn't cause as much central nervous system fatigue, will allow me to push that a little bit more, get higher volume, push the intensity higher. It's a little bit safer. The hack squat has safeties. The leg press has a safety. If I fail, I am not going to crush myself. So focusing on exercises that allow you to push that intensity as well is where exercise selection really becomes a key piece of muscle growth. But again, there is no must do exercises. Anyone that tells you you must do a barbell back squat because it is the king of all exercises. Now, I agree. I love the barbell back squat. It's my favorite thing to do. It's been my favorite exercise since I was like 14. But if you don't want to and you just want to get bigger quads, you don't have to. It's okay. So now that that's out of the way, we're just going to forget that ever happened. Barbell back squat, king of all exercises. Let's go. But you need to find the exercises that allow you to get the most stretch and the most tension on that muscle. So that is all that matters for muscle growth. We're going to dive in a little bit later into a full program that I will give you that will allow you to build an overall physique that you can be very proud of, and it will select the exercises that will, I think, be able to maximize your physique. Now, you won't all be able to fit this entire workout into your program, but I think if you can, and this is what you want to do, make sure you're taking notes a little bit later. I'll let you know exactly what that looks like and when that is coming. So the next thing in exercise selection and exercise variation is, how many exercises do I need to do? The answer, you're going to be shocked. It depends. How many exercises do you actually need to do? Again, I could argue you need to do 6 exercises, hit all 6 movement patterns, crush them with the volume. It will build a pretty good physique. Like I said, your triceps, your biceps, your mid delt, your hamstrings, your calves, if you care about trying to build your calves. Those things might lag a little bit behind if you only do those 6 movements. But again, if we're progressively overloading, if we're getting stronger, if even just changing a couple grip variations, doing some reverse grip rows, some closer grip bench press, we can get a little bit more tricep and bicep growth. So just adding in those little variations, like if you're bench pressing a typical powerlifting style like 3 times a week to be able to get your volume in. You need to keep the frequency a little higher and the volume per session a little lower. Switching in a close grip variation can be a great way to make sure you hit your triceps a little bit more and just switch it up so that we don't cause any sort of overuse, sort of injuries. Those things can happen, especially as we start to push volume and load much, much higher. If we're doing the same exact thing all the time, you're eventually going to get very, very bored. And again, your body may fall into some patterns that lead to some overuse or just, little nagging things. Probably won't be a huge issue as long as we're progressing in a smart way. But as long as you're making progress, I could argue, again, those 6 lifts be plenty to get you plenty strong and plenty big. But again, it probably will plateau at some point and we will need to get a little bit more dedicated work. So I definitely understand the need for some different variations of the exercise, either changing out the implement, because if we change from a barbell to a dumbbell, gives us a little bit more freedom, a range of motion. Maybe your overhead press, shoulder starts to get a little bit of a thing, but we come neutral grip with a dumbbell, boom, we're good. So just working in those different variations. And then, some of the isolation stuff for, like I said, the hamstrings, the triceps, maybe a little bit of biceps and some lateral raises. If you add those to those 6 main movements, I think you can kind of just cycle through as you plateau or get super bored, or again, your body starts to kind of just adapt. Maybe some overuse stuff happens. Then you can just tweak the variation a little bit. But again, those movement patterns are going to be part of the routine no matter what. So I could argue that you could get away with only doing 6 exercises. We'll probably bump that up to like 10. And how often do you actually need to switch those variations? Again, it really depends on you. If you're the type of person that just likes to get in the gym, get after it. As long as you are making progress, you are continuing to progress in some way. I don't care what that is, whether you're adding weight to the exercise, you're adding reps. If you can add volume, great. I don't like to necessarily look at volume as a progressive overload technique for this one purpose. Really, it just matters how much time you have in the gym to add volume. So if you have the time, or you get to the point where you want to run some sort of like specialization program where you focus on a couple specific muscle groups and hit them with a ton more volume and just pull the volume back on everything else, then maybe that can be the progressive overload technique. But if we want to just do the same program forever, as long as you are making progress and you don't get overly bored, you can just do the same program forever. Like I said, eventually you'll probably get some lagging body parts that you'd want to bring up. But for the general person, I think the best thing to do is stick to a program for 6 to 8 weeks, especially at the beginning. It's going to take you time to learn the movement patterns and learn how to push intensity. So if you build a program around those 6 main movement patterns with a few extras for some fun, a good pump, and just to make sure that you hit the muscle groups that you really need to hit a little bit extra, that those compound exercises don't hit the best, then I think you can make great gains for a really long time. But I would definitely stick to your program for like for definitely like 8 weeks to make sure that you, again, learn those movements, you get better, you're making progress. And then we only need to switch it up again if we get super bored, because your motivation to train does matter. Your enjoyment of training does matter. If you like what you're doing, you like the exercises, you're going to push them more intensely. You're going to work harder. You're going to be more excited to get in there. So again, that leads to that intentionality, that focus of like, yeah, I love the pump from this exercise. I'm going to keep crushing it. I can't wait to add more weight. But if you're like, oh man, I got to go in and do that again, it's like, we can probably find another movement pattern. Unless you're like me and you're a power lifter and you have to go in and bench press and you're just like, I hate bench pressing. I don't know why I picked this sport, to be honest. I picked a sport with an event that is the main part of the sport that I hate doing. I hate bench pressing, guys. I absolutely can't stand it. It's my least favorite thing to do in the gym. I didn't barbell bench press for like the past decade before I started powerlifting. I just put the barbell down. I was like, I'm done with it. I don't like it. It's not fun. Every time I picked it up, I hurt myself. So I was like, this is stupid. Why does anybody use this stupid thing? But now I do it 3 times a week. What was I thinking? Anyway, but if you are not a power lifter, there is no must do exercise. So switch it out if you don't like it. Find a different exercise for that muscle group in that movement pattern that helps you make progress and helps you get interested in the gym. So you need as many exercises as really you can fit in, and just to make sure that you build that foundation of strength and that foundational muscle that is going to lead to the physique that you're looking for by actually being in the gym and looking like you lift weights. If you want to look like you lift weights, as long as you're hitting every muscle group with a good amount of volume, your exercise selection isn't going to be all that important. Where you may find the need for some variation is not all muscle groups for every single person react exactly the same. So if, your triceps really don't get super activated from pressing movements, maybe we do need to get some more isolated tricep work, or, your biceps for your back, or your back doesn't grow from X amount of volume. So now we have to find more exercises that we can add in to get more volume so that you don't end up with overuse, or you're not trying to do 8 sets of barbell rows, which is going to put a lot of stress on that whole posterior chain, which might, wear out your low back a little bit before your back actually gets to work. So maybe we need to cycle in some other exercises if we need more volume in certain areas. So that can be a good way to figure out the variation. It's going to be trial by error, figuring out how much volume each exercise or each muscle group sort of needs and how your body reacts strength wise. Like, I can get away with not squatting quite as much. I don't need to squat with as much volume. I just need to do more load. That seems to work better for my squat. For deadlift, same kind of way. Deadlift needs a little bit more volume, and I actually recover a little bit from deadlift. So I can do more volume. And then bench press just depends on how my body is feeling. But I know that I need more volume because I need to continue to get better at it. I just need to be able to make sure that I can recover from that volume. So it's kind of playing with that strength wise. And like I said, if your muscles aren't reacting the way that you want them to from certain exercises, like maybe you find that your chest needs a ton of stretch this way coming back. So maybe a machine chest press or dumbbell bench really works better because you're able to get much more of that stretch, and it just doesn't grow as much when you're doing the barbell and you're limited in that range of motion. So maybe we need to start switching those out if things aren't growing the way that we want. You're probably not going to find this out until you become that sort of intermediate lifter. You're going to make a ton of gains in the first 2 years as long as you are progressively overloading and, continuing to push the intensity. If you're continuing to push hard, you'll make a lot of gains kind of regardless of what you're doing, but that will stall out eventually. So that's where, the exercise variation might need to take some turns. It's like, how do we find exercises that help us stretch a little bit more, get more range of motion, get that tension that we can control and push more intensely? I'll give you a good example. About, I don't know what it was, probably about 3 years ago, I really started to get into the lengthened, stretch mediated hypertrophy sort of studies. I feel like that's about when it started to come back around as like, oh, this is really, really important. And I noticed like how much my back was lagging behind everything else. Like, I trained my back a good bit. Like, I liked back training, but I wasn't doing it in the way that it needed to be done. I wasn't getting my lats into that stretched position. Like, I had no lat spread whatsoever. I went like, I would hit a lat spread in the mirror and you just wouldn't see like anything. And it's like, I've been lifting a really long time for this not to be there. So I decided to really dive into how do I make my back training better, and focusing on shifting my exercise selection to back exercises that allowed me to get maximal stretch. So it was more chest supported, exercises that allowed my chest to stop and me to just stretch out my lat and really feel that. And as I started to get the ability to stretch my back muscles and get that tension, and I really focused on that, and I switched to exercises that allowed me to do that better and be able to recover, because I also was the type of person that just loved to like stack a ton of plates on like the T-bar and just crush it. Like I was strong, but like it just wasn't going. Or like, barbell rows, I could row a ton, but I wasn't doing it in the way that it needed to be done. So being able to shift my exercise selection and the variation in my intention to exercises that were better for that stretch allowed me to grow a ton. My back is so much bigger now. And like I said, that was 15 years into my journey that my back has finally grown. So maybe by looking at your exercise selection as you progress and as you get more advanced, it becomes maybe even more important. But if you can focus on maximizing that tension for muscle growth in the beginning, then we have a long way to go and a lot of growth potential. So figuring that out, and then you can kind of vary your exercises from there, I think can really allow you to make sure that you get what you want out of your training. So we know what exercise selection is. We know how to select different exercises, different rep ranges and volumes for different adaptations. We understand the goal of the exercise, how it factors into our exercise selection. We know about how many exercises we need to do. We understand that as long as we are making progress and we are not harming ourselves, then we can just continue to progress with the exercises. But what about that shocking and confusing the muscles? I know you said that doesn't matter all the way back at the beginning, if we can remember back that far, if you're still with me. Why isn't that the way to go? Because we never get a chance to progress in the exercise and to know if we are progressing in the exercise. If you don't do something for, an extended period of time, how do I know if I get any better? If I go in and I do, let's say, seated cable rows for one of my workouts, and then the next week I go in and I do a barbell bent over row. On the seated cable machine, I did 200 pounds. And on the barbell row, I did 100 pounds, let's just say, just for argument's sake. How do I know? Did I get better at rows because I could do 100 on the barbell row compared to the cable machine? And then, when I go back to the cable machine the next time, I can do 200. I do 200 again because that's what I did last time. Okay. But I can't get past that because I didn't get any better. So we don't know if we made any progress. So if you don't spend any time actually making progress, how do you know if you're actually getting any bigger or any stronger? And if you want to know if you're getting bigger, a really good indicator is if you are getting stronger in the gym. It's really that simple. If you're getting stronger in the gym and you're gaining weight, or your body composition is changing, you're probably gaining muscle. So that is a great indicator. But if we don't know if we're getting any stronger, how do we know if we're actually building any muscle? And we haven't spent any time doing that same movement pattern, giving the body time to adapt and time to actually build to see if it reacted to that exercise. If we keep doing a different back exercise every single week, we don't know if we're getting any better. We don't know how our body's adapting. So we don't know if that's actually a good exercise for us or not. If you do an exercise for 4 weeks and nothing happens, you don't get any stronger, you don't notice any changes in your body. Now, 4 weeks is probably not a good indicator of like actual changes in your body, but like, let's just say you continue to do that exercise for 4 weeks. You just can't really get any stronger for whatever reason. Your body is just not connecting to what you need to do to be able to move more weight. It's probably a good indicator that maybe that's not a great exercise for you because you're not getting the activation, the mind muscle connection. You're probably not going to be able to continue to progress in that exercise. So maybe let's swap that one out. Let's go to a different one. But if we don't do it for that amount of time, how do we know if it was just something new, or we just, didn't, just didn't give ourselves enough time? So that's why we have to actually try to progress in the exercise, and we can't just continue to shock the muscles left and right, because eventually we're just not going to be able to make the progress that we need, and we're not going to be able to know if we're making the progress that we want. So that's why we don't just continue to vary up exercises. Now, as you get more and more advanced, you can get more of that sort of overuse thing. So maybe the variation gets a little bit higher, and you're a little bit better at all of the exercises. You've been working out for a long time. You've probably done a huge variety of these things. You know kind of how to do it. And when you step to a different machine for a different exercise, it's like, I have a good idea the weight that I need to start with to hit the intensity that I need. So maybe I just need like 1 week to find my groove, and then the next 3 weeks, boom, 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 I'm making progress. And then it's like, okay, either now I get bored, or now I just need to do something different for whatever reason, because I know if I do, too many weeks of barbell bench press, my elbow starts hurting. So I need to switch out the barbell bench press for dumbbell bench press, whatever that might be. So you kind of know your body at that point. You can switch it up a little bit more. Like I said, the variation from that beginner stage on in the very beginning doesn't need to be that high. We can keep the same exercises for 8 weeks. You can keep them for 12 weeks, as long as we are still making progress and you aren't incredibly bored. Now, again, movement pattern is going to be the most specific thing. So if you do get bored barbell bench pressing and you want to check out the dumbbells, cool, go check out the dumbbells, make some progress there. Do that for 4 to 8 weeks. And then maybe we go to a different pressing variation, whatever it might be. We go back to the barbell. It's like, oh, cool. Let's see if, we can make more progress now in the next 8 weeks on the barbell. So you can keep switching it out movement pattern wise, especially if your goal is mostly just body composition, physique, and just general strength. The movement pattern is going to be the biggest key, but I would still make sure I'm getting at least 4 weeks out of a movement pattern to make sure that I'm making progress and it is good for me. And if you do it for 4 weeks and it doesn't work, you can throw it out forever. Like I said, no must-do exercises. I don't ever have to go back to whatever it might be, machine chest press, if it doesn't work for me, or the machine at my gym just doesn't fit me right. I don't have to do it. I can just scrap that thing forever. I did it for 4 weeks. It didn't work. My body didn't like it. I hated every session that I had to do it in. So it was like, okay, I'm just going to throw that out forever. So as you get more advanced, you learn which exercises really work for you the best. And then you'll probably develop like 3 or 4 in each movement pattern that you can kind of just rotate through, and that way the progress, the progressions better, and I can just keep kind of switching them in and out. So I think that's also a great way to figure out your exercise selection. Or like I said, as you get more advanced, it's like, okay, how do I get more out of this? If you've been doing like lying leg curls for a really long time, and then you decide my hamstrings just aren't growing enough, let me switch to seated. And you get more growth out of the seated because you're able to get more stretch. You're in a better position. You're able to use more of your hamstrings. So they actually show that the seated hamstring curl leads to more growth because you put yourself in hip extension and you're able to really stretch out the hamstrings much more than on the lying curl machine. So, if you do something like that, now I'm switching to how do I get greater ranges of motion, because my range of motion has gotten better. I've gotten stronger. Now I can vary the exercise selection and make more advancement as I get more advanced. So you start to learn your body, you start to get better at movement, and then you can continue to advance the exercise selection, which allows you to make more growth. I promised you guys a program, so get your little notebooks out, get your phone out. This is where we're going to outline this program. So if our goal is just strength and it is functional longevity, we just want to be strong ass people. This is not a powerlifting program. I will actually go over my powerlifting program in a different podcast because I'm going to be starting prep for the meet. We're about 15-ish weeks out. So I'm going to start my 12-week prep with probably a few deloads optional in there. So I'm going to start at about 14 weeks. So I'm going to do a podcast for you guys on the entire powerlifting program and how it breaks down. So we'll get real nerdy about that. But it's just going to be a general strength focused sort of program here. So remember, we need the 6 main movement patterns, right? I already kind of outlined what this might look like. So on day 1, we're going to squat and we're going to barbell row. So that's going to hit the quads and the glutes. We can do, again, we need to get about 6 to 15, 6 on the low end for each muscle group for strength. So we need to be working in that 1 to 5, maximum like 8 rep range so that we can push heavy enough to get stronger for each of these muscle groups and these movement patterns. So let's say we hit 3 to 4 sets of squats, 3 to 4 sets of barbell rows. So we hit our quads and our glutes with 3 to 4 sets. We hit our back, and say we did reverse grip barbell rows. We hit our back and our biceps for 3 to 4 sets on this day. So then what can we do on top of that? Let's just say we want to get a little bit more quad work out of this. We're a little more glute dominant squatter like myself. I'll do leg extensions here for like 3 sets or so. So I've hit now 6 sets of quads, assuming I can count quads in my squat for all those sets. If you have a muscle that's not super activated, like say, quads on your squat are not like, it's not super great for them, cut it in half. You get half the volume for that. Or like your biceps for your rows, will cut that volume in half. So we did 4 sets of rows. I did 2 sets of biceps. So making sure that you get enough isolated volume based on what you're doing on your compound movements, because that is going to count. It is putting stress on your bicep. It is putting stress on your bicep tendon in your elbow. So if we're doing a ton of rowing and a ton of bicep work, we need to make sure that we account for that in our recovery. And if we start to feel something, it's like, why? Well, we're doing a ton of work. So let's say on that first day still, we get the leg extensions, and now that we hit some bicep, we do some tricep extensions just to make sure that we hit that with some volume. 3 sets each. So now we've hit the quads we said we did 4 sets of squats, we hit 2 sets of quads. The leg extensions were 4 sets. So we've hit 6 sets of quads, we've hit 3 sets of glutes, we've hit 4 sets of row, we've hit 2 sets of biceps, and we hit 4 sets of tricep extensions. So we've hit 4 sets on the triceps. Next session, we go and do our hinge pattern. We're going to deadlift. I think if you really care about just general strength, I really believe that doing an RDL will get you more than a deadlift because it is using the hamstrings more. You get all of the posterior chain and glute. Actually, I think you get a little bit more out of the glutes because you probably get a little bit more stretch and a little bit more tension. So I think a general strength person, you should probably just do an RDL unless you want to deadlift twice a week. If you want to do regular deadlifts to get your deadlift up, and you want to do an RDL to hit your hamstrings. So that's what we'll do in this case. I'll work this in. So we're going to deadlift, and then we're going to bench press. So with the deadlift, we hit 4 sets of our hinge pattern, and now we hit 4 sets of our push pattern with the bench press as well. So what isn't really getting worked as much in this case? Let's say we could probably we didn't really hit any bicep work. So let's do chin-ups on this day, reverse grip chin-ups to hit the lats and the bicep, so we get some volume in that pull down range. And then we'll make sure that we hit some sort of single leg, a little bit more quad glute dominant thing. So let's hit a lunge. Let's do lunges and chin-ups, and then maybe we could throw in some lateral raises to finish this one out, just to round out our physique a little bit. All right, last day. Actually, we are going to do chin-ups. Let me switch that. Let me do regular for that other session. So let's do deadlift, we'll bench, and then let's hit a single arm lat pull down straight ahead. We'll hit that here with the lunges, or like a cable step up. If you just want to use the cable stack machine, we could do something like that to make sure that we hit some single leg squat pattern. So let's hit that on this day. And then maybe some lateral raises. All right, last day. We're going to barbell overhead press for strength, about 4 sets. We'll do our chin ups on this day, about 4 sets. And then we need to get some extra work in, probably for the hamstrings. This is where I will hit some sort of RDL, making sure that we hit that. If you really want to hit the hamstrings a little bit more, we could pair that with like, not superset, but pair it later with like a lying leg curl. And then you can get in some more of your isolation work, or maybe we need to do some sort of other push pattern. So maybe we'll do a skull crusher to a close grip press, as many as you can, skull crusher into a close grip press, hit the triceps a little bit more. Maybe if you really care about isolating your biceps a little bit more, other than all the reverse grip rowing that we did, you can, but there's your strength program. And that's how kind of the exercise selection breaks down. We've hit everything that we need to, made sure that we hit the leg extensions to hit that rectus femoris. We've built an entire strength program and included enough accessory work to make sure that we build a physique that looks as strong as we actually are. So now, if our goal is not just to be as strong as possible, or as functional as possible, I hate that fucking word, but it's the truth. The problem with the word functional is it's been so ruined by idiots online who think functional training is like adding all of this balance to everything. Like in the real world, that you're just standing on tectonic plates to do anything. Like every time I have to pick up a box, the world is going to start moving underneath me. And if I can't stabilize on the Bosu ball to pick up the thing, then I can't do anything. It's like, shut the fuck up. Anyway, if you're strong enough to lift a free weight and stabilize your core, then you can pick up a box. You're going to be okay. It is functional strength. Strength is functional on its own. You don't need to make exercises more functional. It's already functional. Okay, rant over. Anyway, our goal now is building muscle. You guys wanted a program for that. Here we go. Now, I am not going to tell you how to put this program together, because that'd be its own whole podcast. So this is just going to be how the program breaks out, so that you can fit all of this volume into your week, however it works best for you. So we're going to start muscle group by muscle group. We're going to start with the chest. It's the easiest one to figure out. How would I build a perfect chest workout for my physique? How would I break out the volume and select the exercises? Here's what I would do. I would start with a machine chest press. We'll go 3 to 4 working sets. Now, when I say working sets for muscle, that is an 8 RPE out of 10 or higher. Or if you like reps in reserve, that is a 1 to 2 RIR for each working set. When I talk about sets and I talk about the 12 to 20 sets for muscle growth, those are working sets only. Those are the intensities that we're looking at for muscle building. So you're going to see why I pick the exercises that I do when we start talking about these intensities. So machine chest press, straight ahead, normal horizontal push. That's 3 to 4 sets. Then we're going to go to dumbbell incline, making sure that we hit an incline variation. To hit those muscles in the chest, we'll hit a little front delt as well. Then we are going to decline cable fly. So coming up, squeezing down, hitting the bottom of the chest and getting a stretch out and around. So the machine chest press stretches the chest around the body. So from the middle of your chest around the body. So that is how the fibers of the chest move. Think about your lats It's the same exact way. The lats come out and around the back. The pecs do the same thing. So we need to stretch it in all directions. So we stretch it back on the machine chest press, making sure we're getting a great stretch. And then on the cable fly, we make sure that we stretch it out as well. We stretch it as far out as we can. And now that's another 3 sets there. So we've hit the chest with 12 sets, and we hit it in a different way for each one with a slightly different implement. Now, the machine chest press, it could be plate loaded or it could be cable. And then we have a dumbbell press. So we have a free weight movement for the upper chest, the incline, and then another cable movement. So we have multiple modalities of tension. We have we're hitting multiple different parts of that muscle group. So that's how we're going to build all these programs. And then that gives us 12 sets. If we do 4, 4, 3, that gives us 11. I add one more. I like to get some sort of single arm movement. So I would do like a single arm flat bench press, maybe neutral grip even, just to switch it up. And I like to get single arm so that we can isolate each side individually. I like to get a single arm thing for everything, or you could do something like a burnout sets of push-ups or something to finish off your chest or to finish off a workout that would hit that as well and build that relative strength. So that's probably where I would go. And let's assume for all of these that we're hitting that minimum 12 set volume threshold. We can hit as many as we want or as many as we can and recover from, but let's assume we're doing that. With all of these pushing exercises, if we did 3 sets of chest press, 3 sets of incline, and 3 sets of push-ups, that's 9 sets there. We hit, we'll say, about 4 sets of triceps. It'd be 4.5 because we're counting a half for our triceps. I'm not going to count triceps on the flies. Your triceps are not doing shit on flies. Don't count a half for that. But we got about 4 sets for the triceps as well. So we can count that. Now, when you're pressing, you're hitting the short head of the tricep. That is the one in the front of your arm. If you flex the tricep to your side, that is the little one right there in the front. That is the one that's being hit the most with pushing exercises. Your your medial tricep is being hit a little bit, but you really can't see that one. It's underneath the long head. It pops out a little bit at the bottom. If you look, when you flex your arm, there's this little piece of the tricep. It gets hit a little bit with pushing exercises, but you're mostly hitting the short head. So let's think about that as well as we get down to triceps. All right, we're looking at the back. So what are we going to do for the back? We're going to do 3 to 4 sets of pull downs. Again, thinking about what are the movement patterns that we need to hit. Hit 3 to 4 sets of pull downs. And then we can do some sort of vertical row. I'm going to put a chest supported row in here. Now the pull downs can also be chin ups, but if you can't hit the volume and you can't hit full range of motion on your chin ups, then go with a pull down if your goal is to build the biggest back possible, because you're going to be able to get more tension and be able to do the exercise more effectively and get more of that tension on your lats and get more in the stretched position as well. So look at the pull downs. Then I'm going to do a chest supported high row to hit my mid back, my upper back a little bit more. Then I'm going to go with a dumbbell row. I want a single arm variation. Now you can do this on the cable. You can do this however you like, but I love dumbbell rows. So I'm going to do a dumbbell row for 3 sets. I've hit my back for about 9 sets. And then I want to do another chest supported row. I'm going to do a chest supported single arm, like vertical, horizontal pull down. I love that variation to stretch the lat up and out. Now I've hit the back and the lats in every direction that I can. I've gotten my 12 sets for my back, making sure that I get it there. And I've gotten 6 sets for the biceps. All of those were pulling exercises. They all use the bicep to some degree. Again, bicep in the shortened position is mostly being hit with these type of exercises at that peak. So keeping that in consideration too when we get to biceps. How do we need to adjust the exercise selection to make sure that we get length? We haven't gotten length on our triceps and our biceps with these workouts yet. So now let's go to shoulders. So we hit we did hit some shoulders in our pressing movements. The front delt is used, so we don't have to hit a ton of front delt work, but doing specific shoulder exercises, more vertical pushing, will also work the rest of the shoulder. So we do want to hit some. So let's go with the overhead press. For me, when it comes to muscle building, I like a dumbbell press. You can go machine as well, but either kind of seated overhead press, I like that best for muscle growth because it's easier to isolate and it's easier to get that stretch. With the barbell, you get a good amount of stretch, really, because I mean, when you think about it, if you bring the barbell down to about even your chin or your chest, you're getting a great stretch in the front delt regardless, but you can get a little bit more with dumbbells. But you can do just a regular overhead press. I would do that. Then I would do a single arm kneeling sort of dumbbell press, hit it in the neutral grip position. So now I've crushed the front delt. I hit the front delts with my, chest work, especially the incline, and now I've hit 2 more. Good there. Biggest thing we want to do now is just hit lateral raises to death. Go with the cable if you really care about building muscle because you get tension at the bottom in the stretch position. With the dumbbell, you don't get that as much, and you're going to probably use more trap as you push up and out. But make sure on your lateral raises that you're pushing up and out away from you, not just up. So your shoulder shouldn't be coming to your ear. Your arm should be going as far away from you. Your hand should be as far away from you as it possibly can be. So hit that for the rest of your 5-6 sets. Crush those side delts with the lateral raises. If you want, you can throw in some specific rear delt work, but you get a good amount of that just from your rowing in general. But if you want to throw in some rear delt work, you can do that there as well for your shoulders. And then, all right, so now we get to the biceps and triceps. We did more triceps even with the shoulder work as well because we did some more pressing. So we got more shortened tricep work. Everything tricep we're going to do is going to be in the lengthened position. So we're going to do cable overhead tricep extensions. Hit that for as many more sets as we need to get 12. So we did, let's see, what do we say? 4 with the chest. And then we did another 4 with the shoulders. So if we did that, well, we did another 2 with the shoulders. So we got like 6 sets of triceps. So we need to do at least 6 more, and we want to get in that stretch position. So overhead, cable extensions, like 3 sets of those, and then probably some skull crushers. I love those. So skull crushers for 3 sets. That'll hit the triceps really well. Now we're going to hit the biceps, also in the lengthened position. We already hit those for, what would you say, 6 sets. So we're going to do Bayesian curls. I really like those. So cable back facing away from the machine. So your arm stretches back. It stretches out the shoulder where the bicep attaches up into. So it stretches it completely. And then we just curl it up from there. We'll hit some of those. And then you can do just some like barbell or easy bar or even the cable, curls to hit some hit some extra mid and short and tricep, but also get tension at the end. Finish those with some length and partials just to get a little bit more length. That should be great for the biceps. All right, now we're talking quads. Let's drop down. We're going to hack squat or leg press for 3 to 4 sets. You can also high bar or front squat if that really hits your quads and you like to do those barbell exercises. Any squat variation that hits your quads, do that here. Then we're going to do a single leg variation that does the same thing. This is where I like to do like a heel elevated split squat so I can push my knee forward, really stretch that out, stay very upright, or lunges on my toes, staying very upright so I can stretch out the quad. We're going to hit that for 3 sets. That's going to hit us there. And then we'll hit the leg extension for as many sets as we need there for the quads. Now, think about this. If you are squatting, you are going to be hitting the glutes a little bit as well. So making sure that we get enough out of that. I'm going to do 4 sets again of the squat pattern, double leg. I'm going to do 4 sets of the squat pattern, single leg, and then I'm going to do 4 sets of leg extension. That'll give me 12 sets for the quads. Hit those pretty good. All right, then the glutes. We can low bar back squat for our glutes if that does hit those. But let's assume, yeah, we do that. We low bar back squat. We hit that for 3 to 4 sets. Maybe if we need a little extra quad work, we get it there. And then we are going to lunge or like deficit split squat. You can deficit reverse lunge, deficit split squat. This one, you want to be leaned forward a little bit more to stretch out that glute. You can do step ups here as well with that lean forward. That'll hit the glutes. And then we're going to glute ham raise. So that will be the other shot for our glutes. 4 sets of all of those. That will hit your glutes for those 12 sets. Glute ham raises will hit the hamstrings a little bit too, but we're going to get the hamstrings as well. That one is going to be RDL or straight leg deadlifts. It's the best one. It's the best way to overload your hamstrings and your glutes a good bit. So we're going to hit that 4 sets. Seated hamstring curl, again, getting in that hip extension position using the entire hamstring. And then we're going to do a single leg lying hamstring curl. This hits the hamstrings slightly differently. There is one muscle of the hamstrings, the biceps femoris, that only crosses the knee joint, doesn't really do much with the hip. So you hit that a little bit more in the lying position when you're only doing the knee flexion portion of it. So that can be a great way to do it. You could also do like a single leg elevated glute bridge that's only going to hit the hamstring in the shortened position. So maybe a little bit of peak, but I would say try to get as much stretch as you can for those hamstrings. And there you go. Work those exercises in the rep ranges that get you enough volume, and then adjust up and down as needed, where you need more volume, where you need less, where you can't recover from, and make sure that you're picking rep ranges that you can recover from. I hope you took notes, because that's a free program for you guys. If you can put it together in a way that fits into your schedule, then great. If not, pick out certain exercises from each of those to make sure that you hit each muscle group that you need to during the week, and then just vary the program as you stop progressing. So do that for 4 weeks, and then pick out some different exercises from there and fit those into your program. So it could be a great way to do it. I think it's really that easy to kind of build the program. Think about what movements, what exercises do I need to do to hit what muscle groups, and then how do I get enough volume to make sure that I grow or at least maintain? If you want to maintain, we need like 3 to 6 sets per week. So if you like where your quads are at, let's just make sure we're hitting them with 3 to 6 sets. So you can cut volume down if you just want to maintain in a certain area, while again, you kind of specialize in another and up the volume there. So if you don't have time, that can be a way to kind of play with that as well. Let me grow this area of my body while I just maintain this one, and then we can kind of adjust as things start to get to the point where we like. And then, then you're at that point where, okay, now I just need to keep maintaining and making progress in very certain areas. And that's when it gets really, really fun. So there you go. That is exercise selection and exercise variation. And again, those exercises are not must do. Those are just examples for you. Again, there are no must do exercises unless you want to max out or you are a strength athlete that has to do that exercise, because strength is specific. Everything else is tension on the muscle and movement pattern specific. So you don't have to pick any one exercise. You do whatever one you want. Make sure you don't vary them too often until you plateau. You end up with some sort of nagging sort of overuse thing. I'm not even going to use the I word, just some sort of thing, or you get super, super bored. But make sure you give yourself enough time to progress. You do not need to shock your muscle. You do not need to confuse your body. Your body is not confused. It knows tension. It doesn't even know what exercise you're doing. So doing a different one doesn't matter. Make sure you pick an exercise, do it, make sure you make progress. If you don't make the progress that you would like, then we can switch it, find the one that works for you. And that is the biggest thing. And then make sure that you are monitoring recovery as well. We need to be able to recover from the things that we're doing to make the adaptations that we want. So if an exercise is it's too heavy, we need to cut the volume back, or we can't do the exercise to the intensity that we need to without being just completely wrecked, maybe a different exercise is for us. So monitoring your recovery, playing with exercise selection there is going to be huge. So I really hope this helped you understand how to choose exercises in your program, why you're doing certain exercises in your program and why you're doing them for a certain period of time. If your trainer is not giving you a different workout every time you go to the gym, that's okay. He's probably an okay trainer, or she, sorry. But that is, we need to progressively overload. That is still king and queen, ladies, in our progress. So we need to make sure that we're doing that. And if we are not, then we don't know. We're just throwing darts at the board and seeing what happens. You're just moving around. That trainer is just making you sweat. If your trainer is not switching up your workouts, but every 4 to 6 weeks, that's probably on purpose. And you should know that that is the point of what you're doing. You're trying to make progress in the gym. But also let a person know if an exercise really hurts you, or you're like, I don't understand my body. I don't think it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Let somebody know. And then maybe you can vary just the movement pattern again. So just making sure you find the exercises that work for you is going to be the biggest thing for you. And, go out there, play around, trial and error, make progress, choose your exercises. Don't vary them too often. Go get strong, go get jacked. And I really, really hope this helped. And if it did and you enjoyed this podcast, please like, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you do not miss a weekly episode. Go ahead and follow me at CoachQ_fitness on Instagram for more content. And if you just want to shoot me a DM and ask a question, this is the Lifting Qs podcast. I do want to answer your questions. So look out for my post asking for questions so that I can answer them and give you my cues to your cues here on the podcast. And until next week, lifters, keep getting strong, keep getting jacked, and choose the exercises that work for you.